Welcome to the Painting Lines Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things tennis. Join Erik and Aidan in their discussion for updates on news and pop culture, and from hot takes to betting, they've got you covered.
Ready? Play.
Welcome back to Painting Lines. Last week we recapped the first week of the Australian Open, and this week we'll be going over the second half of the tournament.
Yeah. So picking up where we left off last week, let's go through our pick'em, see where we were right and what matches we were wrong on. So for me, the big ones that I was impressed with myself on was that I got Borges upsetting Dimitrov and Norrie beating Ruud, but I did miss on Paul, Griekspoor, Deminar, and Tsitsipas. What about you? Which ones did you get?
Yeah, so I also missed on Tommy Paul and Deminar. I don't know how you got Norrie right because I was so confident in Ruud, but that was one I missed. Congrats on that. And then Cazot and Fritz, which I was actually pretty pumped about because those are two of my like kind of dark horse picks where obviously Cazot I just kind of picked from a momentum swing. And then Fritz, I don't know, that was just a kind of a gut feeling. So
Go with the American.
yeah, go with the American. Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know how I got that Dimitrov versus Borges one, though. I was
Oh,
like,
dude.
time on court. It's going to play a factor.
Yeah, I know. All right.
Let's just jump right into the third round here. I just kind of wanted to focus on the matches that like really stood out to us. We don't have to go through like every match that happened because some of them it's like you really expected Alcaraz to win his match and it wasn't really anything that special. But starting off with Tommy Paul, like we talked about, got upset by Kecmanovic. It was a close match, 5-setter, but it really seemed like Tommy kind of got mentally broken after he lost that fourth set. And then in that fifth set, it was just 6-0 domination.
I know. And I was so confident in Tommy. I bet on him 3 separate times. So before the match, I had him at like negative odds, I think like minus 180. And then he dropped the first set and then he turned positive. It was like, oh, plus 180. So then I bet him again. And then he dropped a break in the second set. And then he went up like plus 210 and I bet him again. I'm like, let's go. Let's ride, Tommy.
Yeah.
And then ended up winning the next 2 sets.
Yeah. In that
Coulda
fourth set, you were
cashed out.
feeling real good.
I was feeling great. I was feeling so greedy. I'm like, hey, I could cash out for like a 100% return, or I could just let it ride. And yeah, so it was pretty stressful because that was one of the matches I actually watched from like full beginning all the way to end. Well, not quite till the end. Once it was 5-0, I was like, turned it off.
You're like,
But
this isn't
no,
gonna
I
turn
actually,
around for Tommy.
yeah, super upset. I mean, I don't know if it was Kecmanovic just kind of playing into Tommy's, lack of, how do I put this? I feel like Tommy Paul plays better when he's on the move, like on the run. Like he doesn't really do well in just a sitting back and forth rally.
Yeah, well, I mean, Gil kind of brought this up when he was talking about Tommy Paul versus Taylor Fritz. And he was like, Tommy Paul has all the athleticism to be that top guy, but doesn't necessarily have the same level of racket skill. And then it's like Taylor Fritz is almost the opposite, has the racket skill to be in those rallies and win points and set up points, but doesn't necessarily have the same level of movement that Tommy has. So, like, yeah, like you were saying, Tommy can out athleticism someone if it gets into that situation. But if it's just a rally, he doesn't necessarily have that racket ability.
Yeah, I think we saw it here. And I think Kecmanovic, the reason he went down 2 sets wasn't because of Tommy Paul just outplaying him. I think he was making a lot of mistakes. And then once he tightened up and kind of just did his thing, like his forehand got into rhythm, he was able to kill the ball. And I think that's just what we saw here at the end.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of letting someone beat themselves, Cazot upsetting Griekspoor, like that match wasn't even close. It was 6-3, 6-3, 6-1 for Cazot, but it didn't really seem like Cazot did anything that special in the match. He kind of just let Griekspoor beat himself. And he was very comfortable just playing defense. And then when he was on serve, he had a very strong serve, or he has a very strong serve. So it was a great run by him, but he didn't do anything that crazy. He just played very solid defense, it looked like, and let Griekspoor beat himself.
Yeah. So how would you compare this match to his match with Bruno? Like when you're a player that young and that unknown, there's really two ways to go about it. Like go in, nothing to lose, take risks, just kind of awe the crowd, or take the Gazoo approach where you're nice and slow and steady and then just kind of outlast the opponent.
Yeah, like you said, it can be on both ends of the extreme. And I think for him, it really worked in this tournament to play within himself and not go for anything insane.
Yeah. Well, speaking of upsets, how about Dimitrov losing to Borges?
Yeah, I mean, I was harping on time on court in the last episode, and I think it was evident here. Borges was very fresh. He played like only 3 set matches to this point. And I still think it was really shocking because obviously Dimitrov played really well at the end of last year, made that final in Paris, and then won his first tournament this year. And then all of a sudden comes out here and loses to a guy that's really an unknown in Borges.
Yeah, I'm shocked too. And I really think you are going somewhere with this time on court because, yeah, like you said, Dimitrov's been playing in top shape, but he hasn't really been exposed with the Grand Slam, the best out of five. And I think since he is up there in age, that we can kind of count him out for any Grand Slam in the future, but he'll still be a contender in the ATP Tour tournaments.
Yeah. Moving on to the other upset, Rude losing to Nori. My justification for the pick'em was just based on how Rude had played in the tournament so far. He played really well in that first round match, dominated. But then in his second round, he had that 5-setter with Purcell, and it made his game to me look a lot weaker, and it made him look very beatable. Even though he pulled off the win in that match, he looked like he could have lost to Purcell. And with Nori being, I'd say, a better player than Purcell overall, I think Nori kind of had an opening there to get the win.
I think that's a great take. And I think that I just didn't even notice because I'm so invested in Rude. Like, I think I made an emotional decision that I just kind of told myself, yeah, he's going to win. He's going to win. But yeah, you're so right. You kind of saw the writing on the wall during that Purcell match, like how he was going to perform. I don't want to spend too much time on it because this does make me sad, but I just feel like Nori was executing so well at the net. Like, he was definitely exposing Rude's far back stance. And I think when your opponent just kind of dominates you at the net, like Nori was dominating Rude, it gets demoralizing because a lot of those points, you're not even getting to the ball. It's like hitting against the wall, and you're just stunned.
And it's exactly what we talked about last week with Purcell, because one of the things we brought up about that match was that if Purcell had performed a little bit better at the net, he could have easily won the match. And
Yes.
Nori just, it seemed like he almost just took that blueprint and applied it and was like, I just know that I'm going to perform well at the net. And he did. He probably practiced it a little bit more too in the build up to the match.
I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
But moving on to the fourth round. So we had first up Fritz beating Tsitsipas, which you obviously called. I was kind of surprised by this, but really Fritz was just playing very well, in my opinion. And it seems like of the Americans, he is the guy where he consistently performs to the level that he is kind of expected to as a top 10 level guy, like the number one American player, because he's made it through to the quarterfinal. You like look at the US Open last year, made it exactly to the quarterfinals, played Djokovic, lost. And it's like he's not expected to really do better than that, but it still kind of feels bad that he's not getting any massive runs. You know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. And you can kind of say on the contrary, like Stefanos too. Like, it's not like he's regressing, but I feel like you obviously thought Tsitsipas, I thought Fritz, but my rationale for Fritz was just, he's an American. They're both pretty evenly matched. But I truly think that Tsitsipas has a more talented forehand, but I think his backhand is just the weakest part of his game. And it's starting to become an issue for him on tour. Like, I think he has the most miss hits out of anyone.
Yeah, I just think Tsitsipas, he has a really high ceiling, but his floor is slightly lower than some of the other guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. So how about Djokovic and Manarino? Let's
Oh
get
my
on to that
God.
one.
That was not a fun match for Manarino. Jesus, Djokovic just absolutely beat him down, left no quarter for Manarino. Didn't even get a game until that third set, 6-0, 6-0 in those first two. It's just such a tough moment for Manarino because he's been playing so well recently. Like he's been playing the best tennis of his career. He's at like his career high ranking. And then he comes up against Djokovic, and Djokovic is just like, yeah, it doesn't matter what level you're at, you're still not even close to like the top guys.
Oh, I know, I know. And that was a pretty funny match because it was one of the earlier night games, like at 10:30 or something. And the party I was at, I actually was able to put it on the TV. Like there's a football game going on at the same time, and they had two TVs. Like it was one of those ultra sports apartments. Like there was a third TV hanging on the side. So we had tennis and football on, and all my friends are like, "Oh wow, is this usually how like tennis goes?" Because they have no clue. And I'm like, "No, this is
You're like,
actually
no, yeah.
no, it's 6-0, 6-0. This is crazy." Because they're like,
This
"Why
guy's
do you?"
getting whooped.
Yeah, they're like, "Why do you want to watch? It's a blowout." I'm like, "Yes, that's a good point, but this could be three bagels. That would be insane, like a perfect game." And I know Djokovic said that he kind of wanted Manarino to get a game just to get the pressure off because it's a lot of pressure trying to have a perfect match, like a three bagel set.
Yeah, I think he also probably wanted him to get one so that Manarino didn't just have that shame of getting absolutely just embarrassed out. I mean, he did get embarrassed, but like if it had been just 6-0, 6-0, 6-0, that would have been
Yeah.
really bad for him.
Oh yeah. I feel like Manarino is the type of player that'll take that in stride too. Like
He did seem like he was having fun with it when he won that
yeah.
one game. Like he
Yeah.
was joking, kind of laughing about it because he knew at that point, like, I'm not going to win this match.
Oh my God. He's such a funny guy. Like when the people I was with were watching this match and they're like, how is that guy a professional athlete? Like they just, looking at him, he doesn't look like.
Yeah, because the skill is just so insane.
Yeah, no, I know. All right, should we move on?
Yeah, Rublev versus Deminar. We both went for the underdog pick here in our pick'em.
Yeah.
In the end, didn't really work out for us, but it was an exciting match because Rublev obviously took that first set, and then Deminar took the next two in two tie breaks. So really, that has to be such an intense mental toll for Rublev because obviously so close in both of those sets, and then you're going to the third set and all that matters is that it's a 2-1 score. But Rublev was able to kind of just battle back, and I don't know where the energy came from, but he dominated those last two sets 6-3, 6-0, and took the match over.
Yeah, and I think this was a very mature moment for Rublev because you're kind of seeing him usually when he goes through this type of adversity, he kind of breaks down and then just deteriorates. But now he's kind of taking a playbook out of Medvedev, Djokovic, their playbook, and really taking in this adversity and using it as, like you said, you don't know where the energy came from. He just kind of became a different person. And that's what propelled him forward. So I think if he can keep on doing that, he might turn into one of those players that whenever he's down, whenever something happens, like he's able to harness and use that energy to come back.
100%.
Did you see Deminar's around the net shot in that match? Rublev hit a net shot and the thing's like bouncing and it goes right next to the post and Deminar let it go maybe like an inch away from the ground, just flicked it with his wrist completely around the court, like around the net. I mean, Rublev was just stunned. Like he was actually yelling. I don't know what he was saying, but he was so pissed. I feel like
Yeah.
when that happens to you, you just kind of have to like
Yeah.
applaud or do something to honor. Don't get pissed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just Rublev.
Yeah, that's Rublev. All right, what's next here?
Zverev hung on to a really tight match against Nori. I mean, 5 sets again for Zverev and second tiebreak decider of the tournament. So incredibly close match here.
Yeah, that was a good match.
And moving on to the quarterfinals. So final 8 here. Medvedev versus Hurkacz. Incredible match, really close, 5-setter. To me, this was an interesting match because Medvedev looked so gassed at the end of the fourth set, and he was up a break, and then he lost 2 out of 3 service games to lose the set. You were kind of like, that looks like it's just going to swing Hurkacz's way, and somehow he was able to like stabilize in the fifth and ended up pulling off the dub.
Yeah, no, I know that was pretty back and forth.
Next up, we had Sinner, like I said, beat Rublev in 3. Still had yet to lose a set at this point. So really just showed that if he's playing at the level he was in this tournament, he can dominate anybody. And another thing is kind of like we've talked about in the past, Rublev, it still seems like he needs to take a step up to be close to that top 4 level. I don't see Rublev even coming close to beating any of those top 4 guys. Like maybe he can pull it off if they have a bad day, but if they're both playing at like a standard level for both of them, like say they both play 90%, the likelihood Rublev wins is so small.
Yeah, I think he needs to employ a different strategy. Like, remember, I've been saying it all year that Rublev just kind of sits back too much and doesn't finish out points when he can. And dude, Sinner, they can both blow the ball past each other. So it's fun watching that. Just kind of two guys young, two of the most powerful forehands on tour too, just battling it out.
Yeah, 100% just pounding it from the
Yeah,
baseline.
exactly.
And then next match, Djokovic beat Fritz in 4. This match was interesting because it looked pretty competitive for the first 2 sets, but then Djokovic kind of just pulled away. And exactly like I said earlier, Fritz did what he was expected to do, but not much more.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you there. I kind of just expected this outcome. Like going into the Fritz Tsitsipas match, you're excited. You're like, oh, Fritz has a chance to win. But going in here, I was just kind of like, oh, well, dude, you had a good tournament, quarterfinal. Speaking of that, do you think Fritz can leave Australia with his head held high? Like he should be happy with these results?
I think he's probably actually really unhappy with it because
Really?
when you look at it, US Open had the same result. And between August, September, when the US Open is, and now, he's still in the exact same place relative to everyone else. Like he's probably improved, but everybody improves, right?
Mhm.
So he's looking at a game. He's like, I probably spent so much time working on my game, working on all this stuff, and I still went out in the same round to the same guy. I feel like it can sometimes probably feel like he's stagnating a little bit.
Oh, definitely. I'm sure he's very hard on himself. But to be honest, man, I mean, I didn't have that high of expectations of him going in. So I feel like a quarterfinal run losing to Djokovic, good start to the year. That's all you can say,
Yeah, I think it's one of
right?
those situations like we've talked about. Fans can be happy with how he
Hmm.
did. He's not
Yeah.
happy with it.
No, 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 definitely.
And then the last one was Zverev just kind of stunning Alcaraz in 4 sets. I think he just jumped all over him early in those first 2 sets, and Alcaraz was just a little bit unprepared for it, I think. Then Alcaraz in that third set looked like he might stabilize, ended up taking it, but Zverev was just playing some great tennis and ended up getting it done in that fourth set.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very surprised that Zverev was able to close out this match because it seemed like after Alcaraz got that third set that the momentum had just completely shifted towards him. And he's one of those guys where if he's down 2 sets, you can expect to come back or at least make it a match. And the fact that he was just playing lights out, making these incredible shots, the crowd was getting behind him because obviously, not only does he have a good crowd following at these tournaments, but the crowd wants to see more tennis. They pay all this money for tickets. They don't want to see a 3-set match. So he definitely had the crowd behind him, and I think that was helping a lot because he was getting the energy. He really feeds into it. You could see he has a good time out there. And credit to Zverev for just kind of squashing that momentum and just getting it done.
Yeah, I think
But that,
Alcaraz is one of the maybe best players on the tour of feeding off of the crowd. Like you said, like he takes that energy and it helps him swing the momentum in his direction.
mhm.
Like when the crowd is all on his side, all of a sudden, even if he's down, it can feel like he's winning the match because of how he plays into the crowd.
Right, right. I know. Dude, that was some of the best tennis I've seen like thus far. And I feel like this is reassuring because this still means that tennis is wide open. Like, we thought that Alcaraz was going to kind of come in and dominate after his performance last year, and Zverev has beaten him now twice. He beat him in the finals. And remember when he was asked about it, he was kind of like, guys, I've beaten good players before. He was kind of saying, hey, I'm here too. I'm expected to win. So honestly, I like that. I kind of like Alcaraz losing to Zverev here.
Yeah. I think another thing about this is like Zverev is about to push past Rublev, and then it's going to be a top 5 guys where you're kind of looking at them like these guys could all maybe beat each other. And Rublev's gatekeeping is just going to go down to maybe 6th. And he's going to be protecting the top 5 now instead of being in the top 5.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, well, what do you think? What are your thoughts that you didn't see Djokovic or Alcaraz in the Slam final?
Well, I think we'll get into that after we talk about the semifinals, which we're going to talk about right now. So,
All right.
Sinner versus Djokovic. I mean, a pretty highly anticipated match, I think, because obviously, end of last year, Sinner beat him for the first time, and then Djokovic won the ATP Finals championship, but then Sinner beat him in the Davis Cup. And so it seemed like it was going to be a pretty tight match here. And Sinner ended up just coming out and beating Djokovic in 4 sets, actually held a break match point in that 3rd set tiebreak, didn't get it done, but he was able to come out in that 4th set and didn't seem like that having that match point affected him at all. He didn't feel any pressure after having a match point. He just came out and played like he had been in the first 3 sets. And to me, it was honestly pretty similar to the Zverev versus Alcaraz match, because Zverev in that match came out firing and Alcaraz didn't seem like he was necessarily prepared for it. Same thing here. Sinner came out and just killed Djokovic in those first 2 sets. And then Djokovic kind of settled in that 3rd. And then Sinner was still able to just outplay him in that 4th set. And Djokovic said after the match, this was one of the worst matches, like Grand Slam matches he's ever played. And I don't think that's necessarily even a knock on Sinner, because obviously Sinner played great, but I also think Djokovic played not very well.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I agree with what you said. I think it's funny Djokovic just even bringing up like, oh yeah, I'm so shocked by my performance in a bad way. Like I've never played this bad before. At least he did credit Sinner too. I don't know. I mean,
I think it's just Djokovic maybe was playing Sinner like it was the Sinner of a year ago, but
Yeah.
Sinner just wasn't overhitting it. He was willing to, rather than just go for winners, he was willing to force errors out of Djokovic, which isn't something you can do very often, since Djokovic usually doesn't make that many errors. But Djokovic kind of fell onto his back foot and just ended up losing the match.
Yeah, sloppy match on Djokovic's part, but
Yeah.
um,
And then the other semifinal rivalry match between Medvedev and Zverev. Zverev up 2 sets, came out real strong in those first 2, but then Zverev just stopped breaking Medvedev's serve, because after that 2nd set, there were almost 30 games without a break of serve for either player. And so Medvedev ended up taking 2 sets in tie breaks. And unlike how Rublev was able to deal with that, those 2 tiebreak sets, and end up coming back after that and win his match against Deminar, I think that was just too much for Zverev, and Medvedev ended up getting it done in that 5th.
yeah, another 5-setter from Medvedev. So we will see how that plays out. I'll have more to say on this later in the segments when we get to match of the week. Because yeah, like you said, man, I love this rivalry. So definitely put that on my calendar to watch.
Yeah. But I mean, like you said, with the time on court, Sinner versus Medvedev in that final, all the buildup for this match was talking about time on court. Look at Sinner's momentum. But he's also never played in a Grand Slam final. Medvedev, this is his 3rd Australian Open final. And you kind of feel like that experience is going to play a role. And I think in the end, when you look at the result, it went how maybe you could have expected it to go based on the preview of it. Because Sinner came out, I think he had some nerves because it was a Grand Slam final. It was his first time in a Grand Slam final. And I think it was the first time in the whole tournament he felt a bunch of nerves. Obviously, there's some nerves playing someone like Djokovic, but he'd beaten him twice at the end of last year. So there's a lot less nerves for that. But first Grand Slam final, comes out in those first 2 sets, and I think just played a little bit tentative, and Medvedev ended up taking those first 2. But then Sinner kind of settled in, and simultaneously Medvedev, who had played 6 more hours than Sinner had going into that final, starts to just lose more and more energy. He's just so exhausted from this 2 weeks of tennis that he's played. And all of a sudden, the momentum starts to shift just because Medvedev's energy is going down. Sinner's is kind of rising. And all of a sudden, Sinner starts to build momentum, wins the 3rd, wins the 4th, ends up taking it in that 5th set. And it's just a tough thing for Medvedev, because obviously this is the 2nd time in an Australian Open he's led by 2 sets and ended up losing the match.
Yeah, well, at least he did get a record this tournament. Player with the longest time on court ever at an Australian Open.
Yeah, I think that's one of those records where he's like, I'd 100% give that record up immediately to actually won the tournament.
Oh, easy. Yeah. Oh man, dude. I just feel like, so Medvedev, You know how he came out pretty aggressive, like you said. It was kind of a little bit of Sinner playing tentatively, but also Medvedev did come out and play a lot more aggressive than he normally does in the beginning. And it's got to be because he just kind of figured I'm not going to last 5 sets. I need to just come out quick, come out firing. Because you know how he usually hangs back for the serves? He was taking Sinner's serves within the baseline
Yeah, I think
those first two sets.
that was also, I think, a strategy he employed against
Mhm.
Hurkacz and saw some success with it. And so he was like, maybe I'll just try this against Sinner, because I think a lot of guys have been realizing, hey, if I just play Medvedev's my serve and Medvedev takes it really deep, I can just serve and volley this. And you
Mhm.
saw that a couple times when Medvedev did take a step back, Sinner just stepped into it and serve and volleyed, and it was way too easy for him, it looked like.
Yeah, exactly. So I asked you this before with another player, but do you think that this was a successful tournament for Medvedev,
I
even
don't
though he
think
didn't win the
I don't think
title?
there's any way it was successful for him. I think he went
You
into
don't think
in
it's
the tournament. I think he went into this tournament, and the only way it was successful for him was if he won the Australian Open, because he's made it to the final before. He's come as close as you can get in the past to winning it. The only thing that I think was a success for him would be if he won the tournament.
all right. Yeah, I disagree. I think the fact that he was a runner up was good for him because I think Djokovic and Alcaraz were both expected to win. I don't think he I mean, I think he had a chance, but I didn't expect him to win. So I think starting the year off right is
Yeah, I mean, I guess based on seeding, he's the third seed. He's not expected to win the tournament. But
mhm.
if you look at it from his perspective, he's been a runner up before. He doesn't care if he's runner up again. I think the only way it maybe would have been successful for him being the runner up would have been if by making the final, he had become the world number one.
All right. So do you think that for a player who hasn't won a Grand Slam to be a runner up, do you think that would be a success? Like if Rublev or I don't know, Fritz?
If Rublev or Fritz had made the final, I think it would have been a success for them, because they've never made it that far.
Yeah.
And if you look at the draw, it would have meant that what Rublev beat Sinner and then Zverev, two very solid wins. And on the other side, it would have meant that Fritz beat Djokovic and then Sinner.
I think I just looked too much into how he treated the press conference and his runner-up speech. Like I feel like he was just kind of like, not super bummed. Like he wasn't crying. He wasn't just completely disheveled. He cracked some jokes. He was
Yeah,
lighthearted. He's like, yeah, I did what I did, but
I
didn't come
think
out with it.
I think he was able to do that because he's been there in
Like,
the past, and
yeah,
so he's like, yeah, I mean, I know what this feels like already to be this close and lose, but I don't think that means that he considers it to be a
mhm,
success.
it's fair. All right, let's hop into segments.
Sounds good. What's new in tennis? What'd you see this week?
I saw an article about Zverev getting domestic abuse charges to him. I'm not going to get too in the weeds here because these are just allegations, but the reason it's a hot topic now is because the court had set a date for when he was or when the trial was to happen. His trial is going to be May 31st, and the deal is it's 8 non-consecutive days, with the last one being July 19th, which think about it, that's right in Grand Slam season. So there's going to be a huge distraction for him. French Open into Wimbledon. And there's a lot of controversy around it because he was just elected into like the ATP governing body for players to make decisions on behalf of other players. And a lot of people are saying like they're criticizing the ATP for first not really doing anything and kind of being upset that the fact that a player who's representing them has these terrible domestic abuse charges against them. So yeah, it's just some unfortunate news.
Yeah, I mean, I think these allegations have been around for a while, and
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, it's relevant right now because they scheduled the court date. But for the ATP, it's kind of a wait and see sort of situation. I think they don't want to act too harshly while these are still just allegations. I think once the court case is over, if there is sufficient evidence to find him guilty, then the action against him will be swift and just by the ATP, probably.
Yeah, so this is actually the opposite of how other sports leagues handle these kind of charges. Like, how MLB, NFL, NBA, they kind of take action right away. and suspend the player without even like really doing the due diligence. So,
Yeah, I mean, there's a famous football player, Sean
mhm,
Oakman, that could have maybe benefited by a wait and see sort of
mhm. Like innocent
situation
until
by,
proven guilty,
yeah,
right?
innocent until proven guilty, exactly, because he was this football player at Baylor that was projected to be a first round pick in the NFL draft, make millions of dollars, and he got accused of sexual assault, I think. Then a couple years later, it was proven that the allegations were false, and by that point, he obviously had missed out on millions of dollars being in the NFL. But there's nothing that can really be done to fix that at that point. So I think obviously this is a terrible thing if it's true, but there is a level where you kind of have to be innocent until the court decides that you're guilty.
Yeah, definitely. And Zverev has come out and said that he is innocent, that these are baseless claims. So it'll be something we'll keep track of. It's not going to really be amounting to anything until the summer, but we'll keep you guys posted.
Yeah.
All
Little
right, what
lighter
did you see?
news. Little lighter
That
news.
was
Bopana and
cool.
Ebden won the Australian Open, and Rohan Bopana became the oldest player to not only be the number one doubles player in the world, but he also became just the oldest player to win a doubles Grand Slam. So I remember last year he was the oldest doubles player to win a Masters 1000 event. Now the oldest to win a Grand Slam is just like that next step. So pretty cool for him.
Yeah, that is cool. Congrats to him.
Yeah. Let's move on to bet of the week. I went for Oscar Ott plus 200 over Lloyd Harris. Ott is a guy that I recognize the name. Obviously, he's a good player, kind of coming back off an injury, and I think if he's healthy at this point, this is his first match of the year. It's at least going to be a good match against Harris, and I think it warrants the bet, given that he is a pretty sizable underdog plus 200.
Yeah. Wow. I like that bet. That's pretty surprising. Plus 200.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm taking that all day.
yeah.
So I'm taking Shapovalov Bublik over 2.5 sets at plus 120.
Mm.
So yeah, pretty interesting because Shapovalov, he's coming back from injury, but he played lights out against Gaston yesterday. Like, kind of dominated him. And Bublik's a solid player. Bublik is, I see him, in my opinion, as being one of the favorites in this tournament to win it. So I feel like since, both are great right now, serving well, I think it could just be a tight match that'll go back and forth and we'll see a deciding set. So that's my rationale.
Yeah, I think we'll see if Shapovalov can deal with Bublik's mind games, hitting some
Mm.
underarm serves, hitting some crazy mix ups, and we'll see if Shapo can maintain his cool head.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, he did it against Gaston. Gaston was trying some shit too.
Yeah, but I think
So,
Bublik is the master of that,
oh,
right?
oh my God. Yeah, I've seen him. I think he did a full game of underarm serves one time.
Yeah,
Just crazy.
he's insane. He's like they'll never expect it again.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Already match of the week. What'd you go for this?
Yeah, so we touched on this earlier, but I went with the Zverev Medvedev match. I'm not going to get too much into it because we did touch on it, but it is one of my favorite rivalries. I love seeing them on the same side of the draw because I feel like they do have a lot of drama. And I don't know if you watched Point Break, but I watched it recently and there was a whole feature on Zverev and he was kind of touching on Medvedev, crediting him being the one of the best players in the world, but then also saying that he tends to play a little unfairly and that like when he lost in the French Open first round that it was karma coming towards him. So I feel like there was a lot of energy built up there, but I feel like Medvedev, this was a great match because he was just able to outlast Zverev. Zverev, I think was sick. He mentioned he didn't feel too well, but couple crazy, I guess, moments. One being in the fourth set tiebreaker. Zverev had the chance to serve out the match. The score was 5-4, but then Medvedev had this pretty crazy, like lucky. He even said it was lucky drop shot return that just like barely went over the net, pretty much impossible for Zverev to get, which just totally changed the tide of the match because after that, Medvedev went on to win that set. He won the tiebreaker and just continued on to win the match. And at that point, Zverev was just kind of like I said, he was feeling sick. He had just played a 5-setter the night before, so he wasn't really feeling too well. Great match though.
Yeah, it's crazy how 1 point can kind of like just
Mhm.
flip a mental switch in someone's head, like, oh my God, they're getting even that shot. And all of a sudden you're
Yeah.
negative rather than positive.
Yeah, well, just and the fact how much luck has in sports, like that was just a crazy because it kind of hit the frame of his racket and like barely went over. Medvedev was like, "Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, it was lucky.
Yeah,
Why not?"
100%. 100%.
Yeah. All right, what
Uh,
about your match of the week?
I went with my boy Deminar versus Rublev. Obviously, Deminar didn't get it done, but like I said, Rublev, I think, really showed just that impressive mentality, given that sometimes he hasn't shown that. And yeah, he won 2 5-setters this tournament. So a great job for him. No real implosions. But I think Deminar always makes the match exciting to watch just because he makes you beat him. He doesn't really tend towards playing an overly aggressive match like we maybe saw with Runa losing early, where he made a bunch of errors and that's really why he lost. Deminar really tends to lose only when the player outperforms him.
Yeah, great to see him in front of his home crowd too, because I feel like he's just so fun to watch. And then when you have the crowd who also gets into it, you can even get into it watching on your couch. Just so explosive.
100%.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.